Huns, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, then hello, my name is Meg and I am cabin crew for a UK airline based in London, and I post predominantly cabin crew content, travel vlogs, and also a lot of cabin crew Q&As, which is what today's video is going to be. So I was umming and ahhing about what to film this week. I am off to New Orleans tomorrow, however, I don't get back until Friday afternoon, and I knew that that wouldn't be enough time for me to edit and upload the vlog for Sunday, so I thought I'll film a separate video for this week's video. And I thought about doing a Q&A, and I was like, I feel like I've done so many Q&As, like I feel like there is literally no questions left for anyone to ask. I decided to put a question box up anyway, and I actually did get some questions that I've not had before and not answered before, so thank you so much. If you are new here and you have a question, either put it in the comments below and I will answer it, or you can go back and watch all of my other Q&As. They will be in my cabin crew playlist. I will put it up here for you guys. If you do want to go back and watch me answer lots more questions. I have worked for 2 airlines. My last airline was EasyJet, and then my current airline, which I don't tend to name on YouTube. However, it is a UK airline and I do a mixture of long and short haul. So I've got a lot of experience in kind of both types of airlines. I've been flying for almost 5 years, which isn't very long compared to some people, but I feel like I have gained a wealth of knowledge in that time. Without further ado, let's answer your questions. The first question I got was tips on how to deal with a disruptive passenger. So the way that I would always deal with anyone being disruptive is you never give them the same energy that they're giving you, because that's just going to make them worse. Think about when you're angry and you're having a go at someone. If somebody's getting angry at you back, you're more likely to get more and more riled up. Whereas if somebody is being calm and trying to talk to you like an adult and trying to kind of understand you, you're gonna react in a more positive way to that. So always keep your cool, remain calm. Sometimes if you're dealing with it and it's not working, you can get somebody else to come and have a go. We are taught at my airline to, if it's a man, for example, that's being disruptive, sometimes it's better to get a female cabin crew to deal with them, and vice versa. If it's a woman being disruptive, it's good to get a man to deal with them. I think it's something to do with, like, if a man is angry, they're more likely to respond better to a woman than they are to another man. I'm quite lucky. I've never really had to deal with anything horrendously disruptive, but I've always just, even when I've had like people swear at me or people be rude to me, I've always just remained smiley and calm. Even when I say something to them that I'm trying to get my point across, I say it with a smile on my face and I say it in a nice manner. Always get the help of your crew around you. It's never just up to you to deal with it. Next question I got was tips on getting up early. So it depends on what kind of person you are, first of all. Personally, for me, I am quite an early person anyway. I am always in bed before 10 p.m. and I always wake up at about 7:30 in the morning, which is early for some people. For me, I would rather get up early and be home for dinner, whereas some people would rather have the lay-in and then go to work later on in the day. Certainly rather get up early and have had at least a few hours sleep, rather than work through the night, which I do end up having to do quite a lot with my long haul trips, and I really hate it. The tips that I can give you, first of all, if you're doing like a block of earlies where you're getting up early for like 4 or 5 days in a row, it is going to get easier the longer you do it for. So like the first day that you have to get up is going to be difficult because you're not necessarily going to be able to get to sleep early the night before. But once you've got up early once, you can then go to bed early and therefore can get up early. Does that make sense? When I was at EasyJet, I used to do a lot of blocks of earlies, and I would always struggle on the first day, but then I remember this one time I actually went to bed at like 7 p.m. and I was asleep by 7 p.m. and then when my alarm went off at 3, I'd had like a full night's sleep, so I didn't feel anywhere near as tired. First night, I would say definitely don't have any caffeine past a certain time. For me, I do drink tea sometimes in the evening, but then I don't find that tea keeps me awake, whereas if I had a coffee at like 3, 4 in the afternoon, I would probably be awake that night. Definitely wouldn't recommend drinking energy drinks in the afternoon. Try and wind down as early as possible, and when you do eventually go to bed, remove any distractions. Put your phone on do not disturb. You can wear an eye mask, don't listen to anything, use sleep sprays. I would say one thing that calms me down if I'm too can't relax is a chamomile tea. Obviously set an alarm, and if you're one of those people that turns alarms off, set multiple alarms. I actually generally will get up the first alarm but sometimes I do snooze it. But I always make sure that I have a second alarm set just in case. I think when my alarm goes off, I kind of just think I have to get up, I have to go to work. Flying is the kind of job where, like, if you're late, you don't do your flight. It's not the kind of job where if you're late to work, you just turn up a couple of hours late and get on with your day as it would be. You can end up with a lot of disruption to your roster if you end up not making the flight that is scheduled to you. So I think because of that mindset, it kind of just makes you get up when you have to get up. Without fail, every time I get to the airport, I will get my coffee for the day that will wake me up. So I would recommend, however you get to work, whether it's driving, getting the train, getting a bus, get some form of caffeine either for the journey or as soon as you get to the airport. Those are kind of the best tips I can give you, really, but it is part of the job. You're kind of signing up to work anti-social hours when you become cabin crew. But if you really do struggle with earlies, you can always swap off of them or avoid them. One thing I will say as well is that when you get home from work, because sometimes if you start really early, you can finish really early as well. Do not nap when you get home, because then you won't sleep that night. You've got to keep yourself awake. I know it's hard sometimes, but you've got to keep yourself busy and keep yourself up and awake. The next question that I got was tips on how to travel light. I mean, I have been guilty many times since being cabin crew of packing things that I just do not need. The best way that I find to pack for work, I'm assuming that you're talking specifically about being cabin crew, I actually try and plan out my outfits, but it depends on the trip, to be honest, because if it's like a really quick night stop or a 24-hour trip, most of the time I will just pack a gym outfit, an evening outfit and a day outfit. Half the time I don't even end up using most of what I've packed, but I like to have at least the basics. I will always pack spare underwear and socks and tights. They're the things that I do overpack, but I feel like they're kind of important to overpack just in case you end up staying longer than you're supposed to. But I would just say plan what you actually want to take, what you think you're going to wear. If you know what you're doing on that trip, like what activities you're going to do, and you know what you want to wear, just take that one option with you. Always take a comfy outfit with you, whether it's loungewear, pajamas, something to just chill in your room with. If you've got a trip where you're going to have like 2 days there, like for example what I have tomorrow for New Orleans, you don't need to take like 7 different outfits with you. You're not going to wear those 7 different outfits. I know that sometimes it's nice to have a choice, but unfortunately when you do go away, sometimes you just have to pack what you need rather than packing what you think you're going to need, especially if you're planning to bring things back with you as well, because there's nothing worse than going away and not being able to actually bring anything back with you because your case is already overpacked. I would say the best thing to do is just like when you're packing, just lay out each outfit for each day that you're there or each night that you're there, and just pack 1 outfit or 2 outfits for each day. You don't need anything more than that. Next question that I got was, can you postpone your start date if you are finishing at 6th form? I don't know if I'm making this up, but I'm sure I remember a question on the application asking when you can start your training by. I'm sure that you could put a date on there. You could either say as soon as possible or you could put a specific date. I'm sure that did happen and I haven't just made that up. But if that isn't the case and you can't actually tell them in the application, you can just say to them once you're successful, I can't start until after this date. One thing I will say is don't ever expect that once you've applied to be cabin crew that you're going to be starting that job in the next few weeks. It's not like a normal job where you apply and you can sometimes be asked to start like a couple of weeks later. The whole process of being cabin crew is so long, and I've talked about this many times in my Q&As, but you have to obviously apply like any normal job. You have to fill out an application and do your CV. You then have to do an online assessment. If you're successful with that, you'll then get invited to an actual assessment day, which is kind of like an audition. That's the way that I describe it. And that will include your interview as well that day. You have to then pass that to get the job. And then once you've got the job, you start your referencing process, which is 5 years of all of your previous jobs and education. That takes ages. And then you've got to get your start date. And the whole thing is so long. I applied for EasyJet in June of 2019 and I started my training in February 2020. And for my current airline, I applied in October 2021 and I started my training in May 2022. So on average, it's about a 7 to 8 month wait period. So if you apply and you know that you don't finish college until like a few months later, I seriously wouldn't worry. I highly doubt there's going to be an overlap, but you can preference when you start. The next question that I got is, can your role be lonely en route? I think it definitely can be, yeah, especially if you're somewhere where there's quite a big time difference. I'll give you an example. Last December, I did a 4-day San Francisco, and normally on a 4-day trip, I would say I do quite a lot and I spend a lot of time with the crew, so I don't really notice like that I'm homesick, or I don't really notice the time difference. But on this particular trip, I wasn't up for doing much anyway, but I also had an antisocial crew. Like, no one really wanted to do anything. We didn't have a group chat or anything. I spent majority of my trip in my hotel room on my own, and that was one of the first trips I did where I actually noticed like how lonely the job can be, because I was going like whole days without uttering a word to anyone, because sometimes if you're like 8 hours behind, by the time you're awake, your friends and family or your partner are at work or they're asleep. So it definitely can be lonely, but I think if you're the kind of person who is okay with being alone, okay with their own company, I think that it's manageable. But I do think that it can be lonely sometimes, especially when you miss out on things, like you miss out on events and things like that. But most of the time I would say it's not that lonely. Most of the time, like my New Orleans trip, for example, I'm definitely going to be going out and doing things with the crew. Sometimes you do just need a trip to have some time to yourself as well. Like sometimes, especially if you've got quite a hectic life at home, if you've got a family, or if you just live in a house with a lot of people, it's probably quite nice to actually get away from that and have that quiet time to yourself. Next question that I got was basically about GCSEs, what kind of GCSEs you need to be cabin crew. So I've said before that I'm sure that airlines ask for 5 A to Cs in GCSEs, which don't ask me what that is in modern day terms, because I don't know how the grade system works now. I think that there needs to be 1 in English and 1 in maths, because you do an English and a maths test at my airline anyway. I didn't do it at EasyJet, but at my current airline I did have to pass an English and a maths test to get my assessment day. However, I actually don't think that airlines will care that much about GCSEs. As long as you have good customer service skills, that's the main thing that they look for. I did not do well in school. I do have 5 GCSEs, but I wouldn't say that they're that important in this job. Like even having another language, sometimes you used to have to speak another language to be crew, but that isn't the case anymore. So as long as you have customer service experience, I think they would accept you anyway, regardless of your GCSEs. You have to do basic maths like timekeeping and things like that, but I think that those are things you can do anyway, whether you've got a maths GCSE or not. The next question that I got is, do you think you will ever quit your airline? And I've said it before, I don't plan to fly when I've got children for multiple reasons. Number one, I find the job very tiring, and the idea of doing a night flight and then having to come home and be a parent scares me. Like, I don't think I could do that. One thing that actually I guess solidified this for me even more, recently my sister-in-law, my boyfriend's sister, her daughter injured herself at nursery and actually broke her collarbone, and she was okay, thank God. But Jasmine, which is my boyfriend's sister, the nursery texted her and told her what had happened, and she was like, I'm on my way, I'll be there soon. And she was there within like half an hour. So the idea that my child could injure themselves and I could be on the other side of the world, I don't want that for myself or my child. If something happens, I want to be able to just leave where I am and get to them quickly. So I don't plan to fly when I have kids, but that's not to say that I don't plan to still work in the airline industry. I would love to progress into something on the ground, whether that's scheduling, recruitment, the crew success hub, the help hub, anything like that. I would love to actually do, and that is my plan. Whether it goes to plan or not is another story. It will depend on what's available at the time. I don't plan to leave the airline industry, but I do plan to stop flying. And the final question that I got was about EasyJet specifically, and it was, is EasyJet a sustainable airline progression wise? The person that asked was thinking of leaving Ryanair to go to EasyJet, and I would say EasyJet is like any airline. You obviously start off as just regular cabin crew. You can progress to cabin manager. I think after a year of flying, you can apply to be a cabin manager. You can also progress to other areas of the company. You can be a trainer, you can work in recruitment, a bit like what I've just talked about really. I think there's always career progression at airlines because there's so many different areas that you can work in. Do you think that any airline, there is progression there? Personally, from what I've heard, obviously I've not worked for Ryanair, so I can only speak on what I've heard, but I have heard that EasyJet is a better airline to work for, just in terms of like the duty of care, the actual day-to-day working environment. I've just heard that it's better from people that have worked for Ryanair and EasyJet. I would always recommend going to EasyJet, whatever airline you're at. If I had stayed at EasyJet, I would have 100% gone for cabin manager at some point, and maybe even progressed into other areas, who knows. Obviously I didn't end up staying, but the only reason I left was because I wanted to travel. If I didn't want that travel aspect of the job, I would never have left. So I'm always going to recommend EasyJet, and I do think that there is career progression at any airline. And that was all the questions that I got, guys. I know there hasn't been very many, but I think that a lot of them were very different, so I quite like that because I've actually answered some different questions for once. I'm not gonna lie, I probably won't do another one of these for a very long time now, just because I feel like I have exhausted it a little bit. Thank you so much to everyone that sent a question in. If you do want to get involved in future Q&As, I will leave my Instagram on screen here, and it will also be in the description box below, so make sure to follow me on there. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and if you don't want to miss the New Orleans vlog coming next week, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!